So we begin as usual with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and that is with the signature of Allah, the merciful benefactor, the merciful redeemer. We give all thanks and all praise to Allah in the words Alhamdulillah. And that praise belongs to Allah whether we as humans choose to give it or not. It still belongs to Him. The praise is His property. All right, so we're beginning on this 14th day of May, 2025. And I believe it's the birthday of one of our greatest recording artists. His name is Stevie Wonder. I might be a day off. It might have been May 13th, but I believe it's the 14th. And we're wishing him continued success for all of the wonderful music he has brought us over the years as an artist, performing for Motown Records and performing for us. And there was rarely a time when Stevie Wonder would come to New York and I would not see him. He's one of my favorite artists, multi-talented genius. And speaking of music, we're going to be talking about a topic that is somewhat related to music, and that is energy, frequency, and vibration. Energy, frequency, and vibration. I'm going to begin with a quote by a very famous scientist who became more famous after death than he was during his lifetime. And his name is Nikola Tesla. Most of you have heard about him through the automobile that Elon Musk introduced called the Tesla, which is based on his technology. He was an absolute genius, probably even beyond Einstein, some say. In fact, some say that Einstein may have gotten some of his ideas from Tesla. We like to say that they borrowed them. Yeah, not that they stole them, but they borrowed them from Tesla. Nevertheless, it's technology that is in the world now. And there are many things that were invented by Nikola Tesla that if we put them into operation in our day and time, it would actually do humanity a major service. And one of the main reasons why they won't employ that technology is because they can't make money off of free technology. They can't make money if you talk about ways of developing electricity and keeping your street lights and your house lights on and not having to pay a bill. That's what Tesla was about, and they can't afford to have that happen. So they'll bury his technology. They will hide his technology. They will pretend as though it doesn't exist. It's not really here. You're not seeing and hearing what you're seeing and hearing because of the dollar bill being involved. So one of his most famous sayings is, if you want to know the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. You should memorize that saying. If you want to know the secrets, not the things that everybody knows, but the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. This information is off of the internet. Sound, frequency, and vibrations can reprogram our DNA. Instructor Bilal has been creeping up on this topic. I've been telling you this for months now, that when you look at the word khalaqa in the Quran, they translate it as he created a thing. I told you that khalaqa goes beyond just creating a thing, and it goes into the idea of programming a thing. And when Allah created the human life, he programmed the human life. More specifically, he programmed the DNA components of our biology. In it is already a ready-made package of information that we are going to enact, that we are going to try to follow. We're going to try to play out the script that Allah has already clocked into the DNA. And there are many things that can get in the way of that script. And in fact, the script itself can be rewritten. Isn't that freedom? What kind of freedom is that the law has given the human being to rewrite the script that Allah placed in the DNA? We come here with an original package of DNA, which is our original script, which has no defects in it, as Allah says in the Quran about Al-Kitab. ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين. That is the book, meaning the script. In it is sure guidance, without doubt. No doubt in it. No discrepancies in it. No say this and do that in it. Everything is straightforward. It's what it is. It's what it is what it is what it is. And that's why each infant comes here the same. Each infant comes here with the same potential. Each infant comes here with the same level of manifestation, of learning. Varies here and there, but essentially it's the same. If you have a functioning mind, if you have a body that's not experiencing any kind of disease or difficulty, then the human being pretty much gets the same start as every other human being because we've been programmed that way. Think about a room full of computers. They can be as beautiful as you would want them to be. But if the computer programmer does not install a functional program, then the computer is worth nothing at all. It's just a showpiece, and that's how humans are. If they are not properly programmed, we become showpieces. That's why we like to dress up. When there's nothing else to do, we think that the material world and the material fame and the material honor is all that we have to show that we are somebody. Look at my diamond ring. Look at my fancy fur, my coat, my car, my money, my bank account. All of these things then become us. And we're going to get into how that happens in just a moment in this particular lecture. So in 2011, the Russian biophysicist Pyotr Kardashev conducted several experiments modifying DNA using only sound and light. Sound and light. And he used them as frequencies. The experiment was outstanding. He and his team successfully transformed frog embryos to salamander embryos simply by transmitting the DNA information patterns, keyword patterns, through frequency alone. In today's science, there is a term called junk DNA, which basically is telling us that 97% of our DNA is useless and has absolutely no purpose. But could nature be so inefficient? I don't think so. This so-called junk DNA could be the key to unlocking our full potential and activate not only self-healing, but many other abilities that are considered supernatural. Many of you have heard of Dr. Masaru Emoto. He's the famous Japanese scientist and water researcher. He discovered the true nature of water and that our thoughts and vibrations can affect the molecular structure of water. During his years of water research, he photographed thousands of water crystals exposed to different thoughts and emotions. He discovered that the most beautiful formations are those formed after the water is exposed to the words love and gratitude. How about that, people? Isn't that something? Isn't that wonderful? Our Quran begins with the word for gratitude. Alhamdulillah. Isn't that something? And these are the words that have the most impact upon the human psyche. This is beautiful. So we're talking about love and gratitude. Allah says all throughout the Quran that He loves those who do such and such, who are grateful. And He also says that He does not love those who are unappreciative. While water exposed to negative emotions and words like hate form incomplete, asymmetrical, the A is the A of negation here. That means that it is not going to be symmetrical. It's not going to have symmetry. It's not going to have imbalance. Asymmetrical patterns with dull colors. Same water. But when different words are spoken into the glass of water and they allow the ice crystals to semi-crystallize or semi-freeze, the designs in the crystal are either beautiful mosaics, beautiful expressions of patterns. When positive words are spoken into the water, just stand over the water and say, love. You should do that every time you drink a glass of water. You should say, Alhamdulillah, and then say, love, peace. That's why we make a dua before we eat. A lot of people don't know that. There are things happening in your food. You don't know where that food came from. You don't know how many different channels that food had to come through. So we speak words of affirmation. We speak words of encouragement and love and honor and respect into the foods. Why is that? Because the human being, as it says here, is composed of around 70% water. And that means that our thoughts have a substantial impact on our health and well-being. Our thoughts. We look at our bodies and we think that we're just mostly mass. We're just mostly flesh and blood, material stuff. And that's not true. That's only 30% of us. The other 70% is liquid. It's water content. Here's where I begin. The vast amount of information necessary for understanding life was understood by the ancients, but has been unfortunately lost. It was systematically and methodically erased, buried beneath the weight of dogma, suppression, and deception. This invaluable information was encoded within their sacred texts, printed into books, and hidden behind the closed doors of secret societies. And beneath the ashes of burned manuscripts, there remains a wisdom so powerful that those in control have worked tirelessly to keep this information from the common masses. Everything from the words we speak, the sounds we hear, and the frequencies that surround us are not passive elements of existence, but are in actuality the architects of our very destiny. The world's hidden history is one of sound and resonance. Let me repeat that line. The world's hidden history is one of sound and resonance. Sound developed first. The Bible says, in the beginning was the Word. The Quran says that when Allah chooses to bring a thing into being, He has but to say, kun fayakun. Those are words. Be, and it becomes. So says Al-Quran. The word person, as I've told you on many occasions, is born out of this hidden understanding of how true humans come into being. Every religion, sacred text, and every spiritual tradition had knowledge of this same secret. Sound creates substance. Vibration empowers substance. Let us examine the consonantal connections for the English word frequency. The consonantal connections are in the letters fa, ra, qaf. Those of you who are numetics students, which should be all of you by now, you know that these are three letters within the lineup of Arabic letters. Fa, that's the F sound, of course. Ra, that is the R sound. And Qaf, that is the Q sound. So let us look at what faraka means. To separate, distinguish, divide, split, to decide. That's the interesting one. Decide. Farqun is the act of distinction or separating. Farik is one who separates, discriminates. Firqun, separate parts, a heap of something. And it goes on and on in the same vein. We understand that farqun, farqa, faraka, and such is a description of a thing that is in the process of separating out one thing from another. It also gives us the word for criterion, which is furqan, the criterion of right or wrong, choosing between right or wrong. It's also one of the names of the Quran. So farqa means to make a division or distinction, to make a schism, that's a separation, division, dissension. Now, distinction is a property regulated by the human intellect and is used to make choices, especially when emotions are not sufficient. Whenever you have to make a decision that is above the pay grade of your emotionality, it's too heavy for your emotions to deal with. Your emotions can deal with the lesser things like the family concerns and the family reunion and going to the basketball game and who you're going with. You can make decisions like that. They're not really situations that you have to have any heavy intellectual input into. But if you're trying to do something that's going to have lasting value for you and your family, then those are things that you need to think about on a deeper level than just the surface level. You got to go deeper than just the water level. And you have to begin to visit the area of the intellect, the neocortex, also called the cerebellum, pardon me, not the cerebellum, the cerebral cortex. It's the same thing. It deals with the intellect and the distinctions that the intellect is able to make for you. So in Al-Baqarah, which is the second surah, 185th ayah, look at what Allah says. And we only need some of this. We don't need the whole thing. I'm not doing this in light of it having been what they call Ramadan. I'm reading this in light of the words that Allah is choosing to use that are good for any time of the year. Allah says, Shahru Ramadan alladhi anzala fihi al-Qur'anu hudan linnas wa bayyinatin min al-huda wal furqani faman shahdi minkum ash-shahra فليصمه ومن كان مريدا. Pay attention to that word right there. Marid. Why do I want you to pay attention to that particular word? Because it comes in the same ayah that speaks on Ramadan. And it just so happens to contain the exact same three letters that are contained in Ramadan. You have Maradan and you have Ramadan. One is Mim Ra Dod and the other is Ra Mim Dod. Then on top of that, this is the only ayah where the word Ramadan is even mentioned out of the entire Quran. There's no other place in the Quran where the word Ramadan is even mentioned. Fasting might be mentioned, but not the name Ramadan. This is singular and unique, which lets you know that Ramadan must be something singular and unique. So you should pay adequate attention to what's being said through this word. So that's all we need for our purposes. Let's translate. Ramadan is the month in which was sent down the Quran as a guide to mankind. Also, clear signs for guidance and judgment between right and wrong. So every one of you who is present at his home during that month should spend it in fasting. But if anyone is ill or on a journey, the prescribed period should be made up by days later. And I'll read the rest of it in English. Allah intends every facility for you. He does not want to put you to difficulties. He wants you to complete the prescribed period and to glorify Him in that He has guided you, and perchance you shall be grateful. Now, I would be remiss if I did not mention to you that there's a lot of tomfoolery, a lot of technology built into this translation to get you to celebrate something annually that Allah is not calling for. That's a big topic. And I know there are going to be people who disagree. What Allah has put in the Quran goes way beyond the pay grade of most of these scholars. Allah says in the Quran that He taught that which we were before not knowing. Allama al-insana ma lam ya'lam. He taught the human being, al-insan, that which we were before not knowing. Well, how much of the Quran is what we didn't know before the Quran was revealed? All of it. The purpose for delivering this Quran as Allah has delivered it through Muhammad the Prophet, the purpose was to make corrections on what had already been revealed. Those ancient texts we were talking about earlier in this talk, the ancient texts that had to go into hiding because some people felt as though it was TMI. It was too much information for the regular people to figure out. So they stopped giving it to the regular people and they took it underground. And that's how your secret societies and your Masons and your Shriners and your this, that, and the third, that's how they got invented. And you know how it is when you try to hide something from somebody, you hide it from yourself eventually. So these people came up with all kinds of misinterpretations and interpolations and all of these kinds of things. When it came to the information, their hearts were in the wrong place on the most part. So Allah let them wander in foolishness. He let them wander in the dark. This is all in the Quran, what I'm telling you. Allah lets them wander. And it says He gives them rope in their trespasses. Where they overstep themselves, Allah gives them rope so they feel like we're doing the right thing because we're still doing it. We're still getting away with this. We told these people that COVID was, to help their health and to save them. And we got away with it. We got away with saying that this thing was a vaccine, and it wasn't a vaccine according to the standard meaning of vaccine, but they let us keep going, and we took the rope and we kept pulling on to see if there was any end to it, and there was a lot of rope left. Then we found out that it kills people, but we didn't tell people that. We found out that it causes myocarditis. a very serious heart injury and disease that you can actually die from. And people have got to be the one to tell you, or one of the ones to tell you, many, many people died from the jab. Now, they might hear this and decide that we're not going to let this guy broadcast anymore, but that's in Allah's hands, not theirs. So this is what happens when you get people who have information and the information ends up in the wrong hands. So what is the purpose of Ramadan? To reset. That's what it is. To bring the world of evil doing to a rest. That's all reset is. It's just a rest. That's in the word reset. Rest. And God rested on the seventh day. Yeah, there's rest all over the Bible. The cessation of activity. Be still and know that I am God. That's the Bible I'm giving you. Be still. In other words, you can't know that God is God unless you know how to be still. You have to practice stillness. Allah gives you the same message, but he gives it to you in another way. Instead of the word still, which means to stop moving, to stop vibrating, to flatline. In other words, to die. Be still. Be dead. Die so that you may live. Or as Allah says in another place in the Quran, slay yourselves. And then they put in brackets the wrongdoers. It doesn't say the wrongdoers. It just says slay yourself. Strange language coming out of a religious book. But it's for those who engage in deep study, not casual study. Yetadabbaru al-Quran. Deeply ponder the Quran. For if it had been from other than Allah, you would have found in it many discrepancies. So that means that if you ponder deeply, you're not going to find any discrepancies because Allah will open up the answers to you. But if you ponder on the surface, then there are going to be many discrepancies that you find in the Quran. You're going to say this can't be what it means because somewhere else in the Quran it says something almost totally different. That's to throw the boogeymen off. The ones who don't like to study, the ones who don't believe it from the beginning, they don't believe this is the word of Allah. So why should they get the goodie? So this ayat is speaking to much more than not eating during a particular month. It's speaking to the ability to be still, the ability to be quiet, the ability to do what we call meditation, to meditate. Every one of you who is present at his home is not talking about your address. It's talking about your mind. Every one of you who is present. You know, a present is a gift. And a gift is something that is given to you that is over and above your needs. Every one of you who is present at his home during that month should spend it in fasting, in abstinence. But if anyone is ill or on a journey, the prescribed period should be made up by days later. They have gerrymandered and jacked up the meaning of this ayat, something terrible, but I don't have time to go into that. You don't really need all of that to understand the main point here. And the main point is that there comes a particular time in your life as a person who is faithful to Allah, where you just have to stop moving, stop being so busy, just be still during Ramadan. Just be still. That's what people do. They almost hibernate because the idea is to stop moving. You know, the English word still is consonantally connected to the Arabic word salat. You see the letters. They can be transposed. They don't have to be in the exact same order. As long as the word has the letters, it's going to have a related meaning. That's how this letter thing goes. So salat and still are consonantally connected because if you're not still, especially in your mind, I don't care how many rakat you make, I don't care how many rituals you perform, you would still not have performed salat because at no one moment were you still. How you going to be thinking about everything in the world, all of your bills and all of your children and the girlfriend that you need to see after work today before you go home to the wife? How you going to be still and you got all that rumbling through your brain? It doesn't work like that. You have to take time to be still so that Allah can separate out the fluff from the substance. Allah has to perform a furqan operation on us. He has to perform a separation. And when you're in the operating room, do you see the patient jumping up and down on the operating table? If the patient is, sometimes they say, well, take this anesthesia, but there's some people who get local anesthesia. They're wide awake during the operation. They don't feel anything, but they're wide awake during the operation. If you start jumping up and down and dancing and prancing and all of that, you might kill yourself on the operating table. You have to train yourself to be still, or they will strap you down if necessary. The other word that is consonantally connected to still and to salat is the word silent. Just take the N out. It's a nasalization, as I've taught you that word. Nasalization, where they add an N inside the word to represent profundity of something that can reproduce itself. So in order to perform salat, you have to learn how to be silent. You got to learn how to zip your lip. Isn't that what Maryam was told? Do not speak to any man for 3 days. We're going to get there, people. Be patient. So my point here is that it's speaking about something that goes way, way, way beyond the pay grade of the average scholar. There's a word here called Shahru Ramadan in the beginning here. Shahru Ramadan. And it's from the letters Shin, Ha, Ra. That's the light Ha. Shin, Ha, Ra. Shahr. Shahru. What does it mean? It means to make it notable, known, manifest, public, infamous in a bad or good sense. It means to hire or contract for a month, to stay a month old. So you can see it has to do with a month. It has to do with the new moon, and the new moon represents a new month. Full moon. Now listen to this. Normally, the truest meanings for an Arabic word, when you're looking at Lane's lexicon or these other Arabic English dictionaries, very often the truest meanings are at the end of what it is they're saying. He says here, any evil thing that exposes its author to disgrace, a vice, a fault, or the like, big and bulky, reputable, eminent. It sounds like a big bully type of guy situation. And I asked myself, why would Allah use this word and attach it to Ramadan? There's practically nothing redeemable about this word. And myself answered me. Shahr is translated as month. However, that is not what this is referring to. It is speaking about groups of people who like to moonlight as leaders over the masses. When you moonlight, it's not even your real job. It's not what you do on a regular basis. You're moonlighting. This is your after work job. After the sun goes down and you needed a second job, this is the job that you take on. And they do it as leaders over the minds of masses of people, masses of ignorant people. This ayah is uncovering the scheme of false scholarship, which seeks to present knowledge as something that only they have access to. This includes your shamans, your soothsayers, your magicians, your priests, your rabbis, and much of the ulema, meaning the Muslim scholars. Many of those scholars don't graduate from grade school. Many of those scholars inherit their positions of scholarship. Their daddy was the imam or the sheikh. And now here's the son. He has no other job but to tell you what to do on Friday. I'm being harsh on purpose. When we see them, they always appear to be reflecting upon the knowledge in the same way that the moonlight reflects the light of the sun. Isn't that something? Now let's do some etymology work. Rama was an ancient deity from India. It represented the relationship between the sun and the moon. The part of the word that says Ra in Rama means the sun. The part of the word that says Ma in Rama represents the moon. The third part of the word, dawn, was added by the Arabic speakers to represent the effect that the sun and the moon were having on the earth. So Ra represents the sun, Ma represents the moon, and by the time God came along, they used it to represent the dry earth, the earth itself, but the earth particularly in the dry season. During this particular time of year, which was the fall season, that's when Ramadan is supposed to be. I don't know what happened that turned it around to be every season of the year. That's strange to me. During the fall season, the earth became dry and weak, unable to reproduce its vegetation. We've heard stories about the young animals whose feet had to be wrapped during the month of Ramadan because of the excessive heat. And they would just become so burnt on their hooves, on the bottoms of their feet, that the sheep owners had to wrap their feet in cloth for their protection. Now, if it's not like that all year round, and we know it's not like that, there are times now when it snows in Saudi. So if it wasn't like that all year round, and Ramadan represents the time of year where they had, in fact, the word itself, they say means burning heat. That's a season, people. That's a time of year. And now they want to tell us it's every time, it's all times of year. It's 2 weeks earlier, every yeah. No, that's the way they wanted to move their commerce. That's the way they wanted to move the people annually to be able to give up the dough. So they changed it from being a month that was regulated by the sun seasons, meaning the seasonal times of year, winter, fall, summer, spring. And they changed it to represent the movement of the moon independent of the season. So sometimes it's during a month that has shorter days, wintertime, and there's shorter days over here in the east and northeast, and it's shorter days than there are in the south or in another part of the world, actually. It could be 8 hours long, and at the same time, in a different part of the world, it could be 16 hours long. Does that sound like balance to you? I have to fast for 8 hours or 6 to 8 hours, and the weather's pleasant. You have to fast for 12 to 18 hours and the weather is scorching hot. That's not balanced. That's not right. That's not justice. They're accusing a law of being unjust. We don't think about these things. So again, during this particular time of year, which is the fall season, study it for yourself, the earth became dry and weak, unable to reproduce its vegetation. Ramadan was the perfect season of the year to begin cultivating the remedial, you hear it, Ramadan, remedial measures necessary in this process of revival. Ramadan reintroduced the necessary measures that we have to take as human beings in order to bring back production. And I'm not just talking about production in terms of what's in the field. I'm talking about the kind of production that we cultivate in the bigger fields of study. Isn't that what we call them? Fields of knowledge, fields of interest. What field are you working in? See, but we don't make the connections because we're taught to approach knowledge as something disjointed. Let us also examine it on the sociological level. Let's break this word down a little further. Ra represents social logic, or what we would call intellectual insight. When the ancient Egyptian used this to represent their so-called god, their sun god, Ra, Amun Ra, they weren't talking about the physical sun in the sky. They were too educated. They were too enlightened of people to believe that the physical sun was a god or was God. They used it as a symbol of how the intellect works, how the intellect rises and falls on certain people. So that's what Ra represents, because when the sun comes up, the social life begins. When the sun comes up, people begin to come out of their quarters and socialize with each other. They don't do that overnight in the dark. In many of those places in the world, they can't even see after the sun goes down. So they get their business and all of the other things in order while the sun is out. Makes all the sense in the world. So it represents social logic. Who turned us on to this logic? Imam W.D. Muhammad. I got to tell the truth. As far as understanding these symbols and what they mean, I'm not talking about he broke down Ramadan the way I'm breaking down. No, he didn't do any of that. He never heard this. But I'm pretty sure that if he had heard it, he would have agreed with much of it, if not all of it. You have to stop being afraid to go beyond the boundaries that you've been trained to operate within. When you know you have a good idea and you've done the research, you push the boundaries of that research and it keeps making connection after connection after connection. You can't throw it away because you didn't hear it from somebody else. That's not the way knowledge works. Knowledge is an accumulative practice. Ask any scientist. Once you have a thing agreeing with the last thing, and then the third thing agrees with the other two things, and the fourth thing has an agreement with the prior three things, you're establishing a scientific method. Numetics is a scientific method for evaluating letters and words. So Ra represents social logic. Meme, as you know, the word means water. The word meme means water. And it represents emotional balance because that's what water is symbolic of. Emotions. Every time you get overly emotional, you produce water from a different part of your body. You heard me say that to Tamir Hassan a couple of days ago. Every time you sweat, you get nervous, you sweat, that's emotion doing that. You get angry enough, you start spitting. You're in the person's face. You ain't gonna do nothing with me, nigga. You ain't gonna do nothing. What you gonna do? Hold up, man. Say it. Don't spray it. You know, we used to say. So it represents emotional balance. When the baby gets excited and scared, the baby will, do a little pee pee in its diaper, a little wetness in its diaper. So that's what water represents because it's seeking the balance. When water falls off of a cliff as a waterfall and it falls into the lake or the river, it's seeking that movement that you see. It's because it's seeking the end of its journey, which results in balance. When there's nowhere else for the water to flow, it rests. The same rest we were talking about earlier. Then the letter Dod represents material establishment. This is so beautiful. Material establishment in the material world. And establishment in the material world is intended to cause an equilibrium to take place in your material life. Your material life requires food, it requires clothing, it requires shelter, it requires safety, it requires protection. All of these things are what your lowest of chakras is in charge of. I should say your lowest two chakras are in charge of the root chakra and the sacral chakra above it, the red chakra and the orange chakra. And we're saying chakra because we don't have another language to give this to you in. It's not because we worship the Indian way or we worship any pagan, anything that's connected to whatever they said a chakra is. And it is science, actually. It's not really primitive. It's not really pagan when you understand the symbols. I told you they lock the symbols up. So you got to go find the key. Well, where's the key, instructor? Where we got to look to go find it? You find the keys in the Quran. To all of these ideologies, that sounds like a big boast, doesn't it? I'm telling you, the keys are in the Quran. You don't think the Quran talks about colors? Allah says, and in the colors of the mountaintops, there is red, white, and black, intense in hue. Allah speaks about the coloring of Allah. They translate it as baptism. The baptism of Allah. They did that to placate the Christian readers. But the word that is being used is sibgha. Sibghatullah, the coloring of Allah. What does that mean? Instructor, the way he created us as black people and white people and yellow people and yeah. No, it doesn't mean that because he never created you to be that. You're not black people. You're not white people. You are not brown people and red people and yellow people. These people knew better than that. The original world was divided up into three distinct colors: red, white, and black. The same colors that they give you in sociology when they tell you about the beginnings of man. It's just that the red are called, I was going to say Asiatic. I think that's the wrong term. No, that might be the right term. Yeah. The Asian world, the blacks would call the African world, and the whites would call the European world. That's correct. Yeah. The Asian world were the red people. The African world was the black people, so-called black people, and the white world was the European world. And those were the three original races that the entire world was divided into. There was no such thing as five races of mankind. No such thing. That came way later. So these are the three areas of insight that we need to investigate if we're going to understand what Ramadan means essentially on the broader spectrum of things. It represents social logic, Ra. emotional balance, meme, and material establishment, which is connected to the instinctive foundations of life. The instinctive foundations are the things that call for life and death orders. When it gets to the point where you get so hungry that you have to eat, that's no longer a suggestion. I must have something to eat, or I'm going to die or become very, very sick and agitated. I must have some water. I can hardly talk. I'm thirsty. So these are orders that your body is giving you. Your material, flesh and blood body is giving you. So material has connected to it a what's called in the Quran an amr. Yeah, your body is an amir over you, and it's giving you orders. You have a whole soul development, a development within the nafs that commands you to do certain things. It's called the commanding soul, but it's really the instinctive soul. The soul that has clocked into it instinctive commands that you must do, because if you get too rotten and lazy, sitting around, laying around, goofing around, and you forget to do these things, you will die. So these are must do's in the life of every human being and animal for that matter. Now, in the Bible, it says to build your house on a rock. It says, everyone then who hears these words of mine, this is Jesus talking in the Bible, who hears these words of mine and does them will be like a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house, but it did not fall because it had been founded on the rock. And everyone who hears these words of mine and does not do them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand. And the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell, and great was the fall of it. Now, we think it's talking about literal things. We think it's talking about the literal rain and the literal wind and the literal. When it is not talking physical, it is talking metaphysical. It is talking abstract language to people who understood that language. And it's given an abstract language that sounds so simple so that the simplest of people could get it, could understand it and teach it to someone else whose mind was situated to learn, whose mind knew that it can't just be this simple thing that I'm hearing. There's got to be something deeper to it. So Jesus encourages people to think and think deeply. It is speaking to mental, moral, and spiritual stability versus fragmentation. When the mind becomes fragmented mentally, when the mind becomes fragmented on the moral level, and especially when the mind becomes fragmented spiritually, and you lose your sense of stability, you lose your stable. Remember, the horse is supposed to be in a stable so it can't get away from you. You lose that stability versus fragmentation. When these three areas become fragmented, which is one of the meanings for furqan, to become fragmented, then you lose your spiritual grounding. You lose your root energies. The word also contains the letter dod in the word ard. The word for earth is what I meant to say. The word earth. Yeah. The word earth also contains the letter Dod. It's Aleph, Ra, Dod. The social nature rules over the mental, moral, and spiritual life of human communities. So the social nature is really the nature in you to bond with other people like yourselves. It's called the gregarious nature, the nature that likes to congregate, gregarious, congregate. It loves being with other people, even if they're meeting them for the first time. There's something in the human soul that loves being around people like itself. You know why? Because essentially all human beings are created from one soul. The Quran is very clear on that. Created you min nafsin wahida, from one essential essence, one essential soul. Then he spread us out. He separated us and to this, that, and the third. And we went into this continent, that continent, and the other continent. And we became all of these different various people and complexions and ideologies and philosophies and all of these different things. But essentially, when you trace it all back to its beginnings, we're all the same. So look at the words for, or the letters for ard. It means to rotate, bring forth herbs abundantly, land abundant, fruitful, productive, luxuriant with herbage, place for alighting and abiding, to tarry, await, expect, be patient. This is what earth is telling you. Place for, pardon me, earth as opposed to heaven, and the ground as meaning the surface of the earth on which we tread and sit and lie. Good land, remain fixed, tarry in expectation on the ground. I told you most of the time the truest meanings are toward the end of the description. Heavy, slow, sluggish, inclining or propending to the ground. You know what that means? It means that this word has a lot to do with our propensity for materialism. And it's materialism in excess that creates this sluggish nature in us, where we don't want to do nothing except find a way to get more material things. See, submissive, a carpet, anything that is spread, that's their meaning. I don't think that was an original meaning. That's just my guess. They get that from reading the Quran, where it says that he laid out the earth as a carpet. So they say anything that spreads, a tremor, vertigo arising from a relaxed state. So you can relax so much that you begin to shake. You begin to have a dizziness, a type of vertigo from standing still too long. And then look at this last one, a wood fritter, a termite. How did that get into the meanings for earth? Dear people, you have to begin to ask yourself questions like this. Never let a word go by when you're looking it up, when you're really truly studying the word. Don't let a word go by and you see a strange kind of meaning for the word like this and you don't investigate it. You don't ask questions about it. You think that's for the big guys and girls to figure out? We'll get back to that fretter in a moment. The earth is also a symbol of the human heart, where all of our social concerns are registered. Remember, Allah said, get ye down from here into the earth for a time. It is going to be your home for a time. He's telling you what the heart and the earth represent. He says, get ye down from here, the skies, the heavens, or whatever plane you're on, into the earth, fil ardi, but for a time. You don't stay there, because it's dealing with your social concerns. You have to be able to get those social concerns amalgamated. You have to be able to get them in order, in line, and disciplined. And you have to get them to the point where they're beginning to share and share alike. You have to get that selfishness thing out of them. That's how you're supposed to be training your children. When the child says, that's mine, and you say, no, wait a minute, I bought that for the entire house. Or they looking at food and they say, I want the last piece of that food. No, you got to share that. Cut it in half. Isn't that what they say the prophet taught? If you have a plate, it's enough for two. If it's enough for two, it's enough for four. That's the principle. These are principles you're dealing with, not necessarily history, actual, factual history, but it's dealing with principles. All right. So, like termites, issues can also eat away at the heart, at the earth, eat away at the heart, like the termites do, causing your structure to fall. The word heart is an anagram for the earth, meaning if you flip it the other way around, you get that word. So if you take the T off of the end of heart and you put it, uh, pardon me, if you take the H off of the beginning of heart and you put it on the end of heart, of earth, pardon me, you know what I'm saying. If you take the H off the beginning of heart and put it on the end of the word, you have the word earth. Put the H here, you got heart. Leave the H here, you have earth, because they were suggesting to those who were informed that this was the same word indeed. Now, there's something called eusocial. You may have never heard that word before. I had never heard of it before. It's not even in your standard, it's not even in the etymology dictionary. This word eusocial, insects. It says termites are eusocial insects that consume a wide variety of decaying plant material, generally in the form of wood, leaf litter, and soil humus. You should know this word. Soil humus, moist soil. They are underground insects that feed on wood, frequently damaging homes and other buildings. Termites cause billions of dollars in structural damage, and every year home and building owners spend over 2 billion with a B dollars on preventing and treating termite damage. So just translate over from the physical world of physical termites and physical damage and start thinking about social damage. You see it practically all over the world now. Social, irresponsible people on the social level. They're acting in the role of termites on this earth. They are land grabbing like termites do. Isn't that the more important meaning to walk away with if you're a thinker? Or are you just going to stay with the literal meaning of these words? Then the Quran becomes just another book. Let's look at the word vibration now. This is going to be nice for you. It says from the 1650s, in reference to a musical string, movement to and fro, rapid alternating or reciprocating motion, is from the Latin word vibrationem, nominative vibratio, a shaking, a brandishing, noun of action from past participle stem of vibrare, set into motus, pardon me, set in tremulous motion, from the Proto-Indo-European root weep, to turn, vacillate, tremble ecstatically, like you see a lot of people do in church on Sunday. You know, that thing that they go into where they lose themselves and people have to catch them, they fall backwards and all of that. That's due to vibration. In the book of Job in the Bible, it says, and the Lord said to Satan, from where do you come? So Satan answered the Lord and said, from going to and fro on the earth and from walking back and forth on it. Stop. Rewind. Vibration means movement to and fro, rapid, alternating, or reciprocating motion. Bible. And the Lord said to Satan, where are you coming from? From where do you come? And Satan answered the Lord and said, from going to and fro on the earth and from walking back and forth on it. Listen at what the Quran says. He, meaning Iblis, said, because thou hast thrown me out of the way, lo, I will lie in wait for them on thy straight path. قال فبما أغواتني لأقعدن لهم صراطك المستقيم. And he continues, then will I assault them from before them and behind them, from their right and their left, nor wilt thou find in most of them gratitude for thy mercies. Remember we spoke about gratitude earlier? He says, I will assault them from before them. Baini aidihim. This phrase, Baini aidihim, the word for hand is yed. Yed. So he's saying before their two hands, or between their two hands. You have to think visually sometimes when you're reading Al-Quran, because Allah is painting pictures all of the way along. When you think about an assault taking place on the human being from between his two hands, if you're standing up like the average male or the average man with your hands down to your sides, think about what's resting between your two hands. What is resting between your two hands? If your hands are straight down and you go exactly to the middle of those hands that are straight down, it's going to be your sexual organs. Whether you're male or female, it's going to be your sexual organs that are between your two hands. So this is an eloquent way of Allah explaining to us that part of the assault of Iblis is going to be on sexuality. Part of his assault is going to be on your genes, your genetics, on your sperm count, on all of these things that are related to those things that you find between your two hands. Now, I know you're not used to thinking like this. Stretch your mind with me for a moment. Stretch your imagination, as they like to say, but you really don't need your imagination. You just need a dose of reality, because that's what's between your two hands. When you're playing baseball or softball, the pitcher is at the mound and he's throwing balls, he's throwing fastballs, he's throwing curveballs, he's throwing every kind of ball that he has in his arsenal, but he's trying to throw them so that the strikeout zone is hit, and that zone is between your two hands. That zone is between this chest area and your sex organs. That's how he strikes you out. If he can get in there and you can't hit the ball, you strike out, then you're done. You are out of there. So we need to take guard over what should be the most protected part of the life form. And that is what we are doing with our sexuality, what we are doing with our, what they call erogenous zones. They had a whole book on that back in the 70s, the erogenous zone. We have to be careful how we take care of that. There's a lot more in this ayah that I don't have time to explain to you, including some errors that were made by the translator that I also don't have time to explain, but it's not important for what I need to say today. Just continue to bear with me. This is the textbook strategy for assaulting the human energy system. If you know how they are doing it, you will also know how to prevent it. Those who understand this have the tools necessary for shaping reality itself. Your life has never been left in the hands of evildoers. It has always been in your control. That's regardless of how you feel about it. You think somebody else is dictating to you and giving you your marching orders and forcing you to do things you don't want to do, and all kind of, all kinds of entities and spirits and all kinds of things are taking control of your life. But that doesn't coincide with what the Quran says about you. Allah says He created you fi asani taqwim. There's an area of your life that represents an excellence that you are just not activating. And what I'm saying to you is good news, because it means you have a chance for activation. Allah says He created the human being a bit above the angels. Do you think these entities and these other things that creep and crawl and go bump in the night, do you think that they have control over Allah's angels? No. Then how can they have control over you? Because you, in a sense, are permitting them to do so. This takes a whole class to explain. I'm sorry, I can't do it in 10 minutes. But I wanted you to know that because, like I said, it represents good news, not bad news. It's not a spanking. It's just a wake-up call that you can get out of that whenever you truly decide and whenever you're ready to put in the real work. It's not an overnight thing that happens for people. It's a work thing that happens for people. I repeat, your life has never, ever been left in the hands of evildoers. It has always been in your control. Vibration, however, has been intentionally manipulated to control the masses. The trick is to create a low-based frequency and then gradually introduce the public mind to it. They don't do it immediately. They don't do it haphazardly. They gradually introduce the public mind to their scheme. The public mind will then attempt to match the frequency. And before you know it, the majority of the population will be vibrating based on these lower frequency energies. You've been in a room where there's more than one guitar or more than one piano. And I'm sure you've seen the test or heard about the test where you can hit a particular key on the piano, A major or whatever it is, D, or hit whatever note on the piano, and you keep hitting that note on the piano, the other pianos in the room or the other guitars in the room will begin vibrating to that exact note. And you haven't even touched those instruments. They're so much in touch with the frequency of other pianos and other guitars that they will begin to automatically vibrate on the same exact level. And it's the same principle that I'm discussing here, that if you set a group of frequencies out into the public mind, the public ear, when I speak about tones now, I'm talking about a particular level of thought, a particular level and way of thinking. Some of that thinking is called low-based frequency. Some of
Assalamu
that
alaikum, Doctor.
thinking, Assalamu alaikum.
Is this in the our sense of behavior modification
This
that
has
you was
everything to do
yeah
with
that you
behavior.
was going to
Yeah.
talk about later on and having us be psychologists with a different term and reference?
Yeah, that's going to be a whole nother class, though. You're going to
Yeah,
enjoy
yeah,
that.
okay. Shukran.
Yeah, that's what it is. Behavioral modification or behavior modification, where you learn to adjust the public mind in this case based on the frequency that you establish. It's akin to hypnosis. We don't realize it that the majority of the public right now is in a state of hypnosis. They're not their real selves right now. What you see happening in public with the crime and the young people and the violence and the cussing and the fussing and the police force and all of that and the way people act, it's not really themselves that they are displaying, not in their true essence and not in their excellence. It's really a state of hypnosis. They've been hypnotized. and don't know it. And that happens from being kept on the same frequency level for too long. What they call it putting you under. See, that should tell you right there that it's a low base frequency. So if you do that long enough and hard enough, then you're going to acclimate the public mind to the level of frequency that you are dictating from where you are, behind closed doors, behind the wall, behind the curtain. You are calling the shots. And then when the people act out, they get blamed for the behavior. Those who understand frequency can use it to awaken and ascend the human soul. The human soul was created by Allah for ascension, to ascend. The same way that they say Jesus is supposed to return and ascend and come riding the clouds and all, you got to understand what all of that means. Clouds mean thoughts. Your thoughts have to be high. Your thoughts have to be raised. You can't have rain until the water becomes pulled up incrementally into the heavens. You're seeing the rain and you say, whoa, and you clap because your crops and stuff need the rain, but you don't realize that you should be giving praise to Allah because that rainwater that you're taking such glorification in, it began down here on earth. You see, people think that the holy life begins in heaven. And that's why the earth is so jacked up, because people are ignoring the basis from which that high downpour occurs. And that's from being observant of the things that are taking place on this earth level. They're ignoring the Ramadan, the dawn part, the earth part, the dry earth part, the need in the earth for water substance, the need in the people for moral teaching, the need in the public mind for ethics. They're ignoring that. They like what the sun does. They like what the moon does and gives, but they're not paying any attention to what the earth needs. They think the earth is just for those who are interested in materialism. When the Quran clearly teaches us that there's a balance between the two. وَابْتَغِ فِيمَا أَتَاكَ اللَّهُ الدَّارَ الْآخِرَةَ وَلَا تَنْسَ نَصِيبَكَ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا. Seek with all that Allah has made available to you your home in the hereafter. But do not neglect, do not forget your share, nasibaka, your personal, individual share, minad dunya, in the dunya or from the dunya. Don't be afraid of the dunya. So those manipulators of human life, they can use it to deceive, to suppress humanity. Thank you all for being patient with me today.
Amen, Bilal.
Yes.
What about Black Panther and his vibranium, the suit? Is that connected?
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's vibration for sure. For sure. It's vibration. It's speaking to the same science. We'll talk on that more extensively one day, but you're on the right path. And remember, all of these things started with the Superman myth when there was just one substance that he couldn't deal with. Remember that? They call it kryptonite.
Kryptonite.
That's right.
Kryptonite.
Everybody remember, you remember that. You know what a crypt is. It'll kill you. That's where you'll end up, in a crypt. Even today, we have the Bloods and the Crips, right? And Superman's outfit was red and blue, or blue and red, whichever way you want to see it. And it represents the same thing as the Bloods and the Crips represent today.
And this new money, crypto.
Yeah, yeah. Cryptocurrency. You see, these people love satire. But what they're doing is they're painting in these pictures of things with these words or with this language and what their scheme is. They have to tell you what they're doing. They believe that that's what God wants, that God will let them get away with whatever they're doing as long as they told you they were doing it. And that's why even in the Quran, Iblis says, well, I just whispered to them. They came. I didn't make them do anything. I just whispered to them. And Iblis thinks that's enough for him to get away with without being punished. And that's what these big boys and girls do. They do things and then they say, well, that's what we told them we were doing. We put it in the language of crypto. We were trying to kill you. We're trying to, they told you in COVID when they said stay 6 feet away from each other, they should have known then that they were saying we're going to put you 6 feet under. Why not 7 feet? Why didn't they say 5? And they went and asked Dr. Fauci, why did you have people stand 6 feet away from each other? He said, they said, where'd you get that number? Fauci said this under oath. He said, I made it up. It had no meaning. He said, I just made it up. And it wasn't necessary. They discovered that it wasn't necessary for people to stay away from each other. And you still got some people who are just so uninformed that they still walking around with masks, choking out their own life, keeping themselves away from oxygen that they need, breathing back in their own oxygen, their own carbon dioxide, which is might as well be monoxide. Because when you breathe out the stuff that Allah intended for you to breathe out, when you breathe it in, it's killing you. It's great for the plants, but it's murder for you. We got the windows rolled up and all of that, and we still got the mask on, and we're in the car by ourselves. How foolish we have been made. But that's what people who are hypnotized look like. No matter what you bring to them as sense, they can't understand it because their frequencies have been made low. Bear with me. So this is the chakra poster, whatever you might call it, that tells you both the positive aspects of what your chakra energies are doing, as well as the negative side of what your energies are doing. So bear with me as I read through this. Let's start from the beginning. You see here you have 7 colors. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is for those of you who are not familiar with this chart or with these levels of energetic development. It's not that you're going to cut the body open and you're going to find these 7 colors floating. No, just like you can't cut the head open and find thoughts, but you know they're there, but you can't identify them physically like that. These are energies. So the root chakra is located at the base of the spine. It provides the foundation on which we build our life, representing safety. That's first and foremost, safety. If a human being doesn't feel safe, there's nowhere else you can go with that person until you guarantee them safety. Security and stability. Imbalanced attributes would be scattered energies, anxiety and fear. What does Allah say about fear? That on those who truly have faith, there will be no fear, nor shall they grieve. Grief is also anxiety, being anxious about something. Grief is when you have an emotional response to something that has already happened. You're grieving now. But fear is when you have an emotional reaction to something that has not yet occurred. I fear somebody's going to take my life. It hasn't happened yet. So we're out of pocket when we operate in the arena of these two very, very strong emotions. And Allah is attempting to teach us how to master these emotions in the Quran. And you know that we are a people of scattered energies. We are not consolidated in our approach, our energetic approach to living. So that's the root chakra. The next one up, the sacral chakra, is located below the navel. It represents creative and sexual energies. Imbalanced attribute or attributes would be the lack of or repressed creativity, sexual dysfunction, withheld intimacy, and emotional isolation. Now, let me tell you something. Back in the 60s and the 70s, they began to implement this particular scheme, particularly on African American people. They began to show us a lot of images of heroes and sheroes that had this sexual potency that just wouldn't quit. Pam Grier, who was the other one? You know, they had a lot of these movies out then. The woman who's just kicking ass and taking names. You know, she's just so bad that the men wouldn't mess with her. You know, she was that good.
Richard Roundtree.
Oh, Richard Roundtree for sure. Shaft. Yeah. Superfly. You remember that one? If you've ever seen the behavior of a fly, I don't understand why you'd want to be a super one of those. They're nasty bugs. Yeah. So these are the images that they began to give us through the movies. That's how they first began to manipulate. Actually, it's secondly how they began to manipulate the African American population. The first way they did it was through the music. They're still doing it through the music. But the second way they did it, once the technology was there in terms of the reproduction of these films, the second way they did it was through drama and through the movie industry. Going up to the third level called the solar plexus, it's located below the chest. It represents self-esteem, pleasure, and willpower. I've been telling you that all along. And it represents also personal responsibility. When it becomes imbalanced, the attributes would be low self-esteem. Think about our youngsters when I'm reading this. Think about how our youngsters, when they go to school and they always sit in the back of the class, even though there's nobody sitting in the front of the class. They always go in and they want to clown in the back. And before you know it, they've grown too old. They don't know the things that they should have known in first and second and third grade. So now they're feeling embarrassed. Remember now, this chakra is dealing with self-esteem, how you see yourself. And if they look in the mirror and they see something that they don't like because they're not smart, like Johnny or like Susie, then they have to act out in some other kind of way because inside of them, in their soul, they know that they're supposed to be somebody. But chances are away from them. The chances got away from them to be somebody. So they're going to be whoever they imagine themselves to be, as long as it gets your attention. Then you have the fourth chakra, the middle chakra. It's located in the center of the chest. It represents love, self-love, and governs our relationships. When they become imbalanced as attributes, it would be depression. So people who are suffering from depression is because of something happening in the fourth chakra level of development on the negative side of it. So it would be depression, difficulty in relationship. You know, somebody who's got a different boyfriend, a different girlfriend every other week, hardly knew her name, and was already in the bed with her and can't keep a relationship. There's no seriousness attached to it. There's no thinking about the future. If she gets pregnant, what am I going to do? There's no thinking about that. There's just that and passing. Now it's a thing where they just get the girl and they pass her along. And they be in the same group of young people and they're passing their girlfriends to each other. Sounds crazy, but I'm telling you, the world we're living in right now is creating monsters. It's creating moon stars. That's why they designate the human being to be a monster in Black's Law Dictionary. They say the human being, that means monster, because they were creating a monster. They knew what they were doing. The next chakra, the sixth chakra, is the throat pardon me, the fifth chakra is the throat chakra, is located at the center of the neck. It represents the ability to speak and communicate clearly and effectively. Imbalanced attributes would be shyness, being withdrawn. It would be arrogance and increased anxiety. You know, if you look real carefully at the rap world and you look at Biggie Smalls, I think his name was, he was this kind of imbalanced, where he seemed to be shy. He seemed to be withdrawn when he was in the public eye. He seemed to be the kind of guy that people could even take advantage of. And he had an overwhelming sense of increased anxiety. But when he rapped, you could hear all of the arrogance coming out in his lyrics about who he is. These people are hiding behind masks. Going up another notch to the sixth chakra. It's the third eye. It's located in the center of the forehead, between the eyebrows. It represents intuition, something I've taught on very often. Intuition, foresight, when you can see something coming before it gets to you, and is driven by openness and imagination. Here's where the true personality begins, in imagination. If you don't have an active imagination, you can't create anything. You will never be the creative genius you were intended to be by Allah. You have to be able to see a thing in your imagination before you can bring it into real life. The person who invented the refrigerator, the iron, the gun, the whatever he invented or she invented it, they had to first see it in their imagination. It began in what's called el-ghaib, the invisible, the unseen, before they could produce it in the visible. Imbalanced attributes would be lack of direction and lack of clarity. I hope you're not counting like I'm counting the number of attributes that attach to the so-called African American population, especially the young population. Now, there are a lot of great things going on among them. There are a lot of geniuses and scholars and people who are doing good things and inventiveness. And there's a lot of that the media doesn't report on. I give you that. But we still have to work very diligently at changing the overall picture of African American life. Because on the most part, these great attributes that we have are not really being seen, not even by the majority of us. That was the sixth chakra. Imagination, intuition. And the crowning achievement, the seventh chakra, is located at the top of the head, and it represents states of higher consciousness and divine connection. Doesn't mean that you will become God. It means that you will become thoroughly connected to Allah. Do you know that the word salat also means to connect? It has to do with connections. Imbalanced attributes would be cynicism, when you become cynical of people, disregarding what is sacred, closed-mindedness, and disconnection with spirit. So here is where you unplug, and in doing so, you become the worst of creation. If you're operating effectively and intentionally, you become the best of creation. Fi asani taqweem. That fi means inside of you, and that's what all of these attributes are pointing to. Things, operations, activities that are taking place within you. Fi, in you. The frequency shift employed within modern music was not arbitrary. Neither was the loss of sacred language an accidental erasure. The eradication of ancient sound-based healing modalities was not a mere oversight. Music changed, in case you didn't know, from 432 hertz to 100 and I think it's 144 4 hertz or whatever the number is.
It's
I can
440.
440. There it goes. 440 hertz. Thank you very much. That's a heck of a shift. That's a heck of a shift. The thing is, though, is that this 440 was more, not the 440, pardon me, the, what's the previous number that I gave you?
432.
432. That's in line with the Fitra. That is in line with Mother Nature's frequencies. So the more you listen to that, which you're going to find these days more I would say, inculcated into a lot of the operatic kinds of music and those kinds of things. I can't even pronounce these guys' names. Tchaikovsky, these kinds of where there's a lot of violins and flowing music. They call it the music of the cosmos. When they look up in the sky, they say even the cosmos is creating music, and they base a lot of what they wrote as music on what they were feeling coming from the cosmos. Is that true for the music we say shake your booty? Did they get that from the cosmos? I want to bump and grind. Did that come from the cosmos? I want to sex you up. Is that from the cosmos? Sexual healing. Is that from? None of those songs are from the cosmos. All of these songs are from the frequencies that are being let loose by your lower chakras, your root chakra and your sacral chakra. People don't know that in the Bible, these two lower energies are called Sodom and Gomorrah. We think they're stories of ancient cities that burned to the ground. No, they're stories of ancient properties that are within the human being that will cause you to burn to the ground. They will light you on fire. You know where sodomy is as an activity. That city was called Sodom. And the understanding of Gomorrah came with the Muslims when they said that they were throwing stones at the devil, at the Jamarat. Jamarat and Gomorrah are related words. So you're throwing stones at your lower chakras, at those energies. You want to destroy those, not destroy them, but you want to put them in check, those lower energies. You're not out to destroy any of these things. Allah created all of these levels, but you're not supposed to let the two youngest, it's like letting your two youngest children run your house when there are adults available. So we have to understand what the nature of this creation is in actuality. What if the very fabric of your human consciousness has been detuned? Have you ever heard a guitar that became detuned? Have you ever heard a piano that someone was playing on and the piano itself was detuned? Man, what a racket that noise makes. You want to cover your ears when you hear an instrument that is detuned. Everybody else is playing in one frequency, and that fool is playing in his own frequency called disharmonious frequencies. They call these things tuned. We can become detuned as human beings. What does that mean? Let's go to the Quran, where Allah says that He created us min teen, from shapeable clay. The word is teen, and teen is consonantally connected to the English word tune. So Allah created us min tun. He created us from tune. He created us from something that is supposed to be tuned. That's what the process of education is supposed to be all about. Tuning the human mind, to be consistent and in harmony with the things around it in its environment. You're first starting with your brothers and sisters. Many of us are not even in tune with our brothers and sisters. We fighting and cussing and fussing with our brothers and sisters, but we go out there and play nice with all of the gangsters and all of the other people in the hood. We're living a backwards life, and we have to come out of this. So Allah created us to be people who are tuned, and that's captured in the word teen. There is also the word tone, which has to do with music. So Allah created us min tone. He created us from tones, from frequencies. And the clay has to be malleable. It has to be shapeable. You have to be able to imagine what this thing could be and then begin to go to work to shape it to be that thing. That's your children we're talking about. You have to have a vision for them that says they can be more than the average. They can be more than what I'm seeing when I look out my project window. They don't have to be like that. They don't have to be slaves to the environment that they were born into. If I take control of their teen, their tone, if I write their tune, then they can sing a different song, can't they? You know what tin is? Tin. You've had aluminum foil. You've had tin foil. It's shapeable. That's all it's saying. It's shapeable. You can shape it into different shapes. The thing about the clay, however, is that if you let it dry out, if you let it become like that dod, that season when dod is ruling, when the area becomes dry, lifeless, non-productive, then you can't reshape the clay. Once it dries out, if you want a different shape, you have to destroy the previous state and start over again. And that's where we are right now with many of our young people. It's unfortunate, but this is nature speaking. If you do not agree to have yourself reshaped, remolded, reformed is what they call it. They send you to reform school. Not that that does anything, but that's their word for it. Reformed, reformed. And if you don't have that, you're in trouble. You have to get back to the teen nature. The answers to these questions have been hidden in plain sight. However, our ability to tap into the dimensions of this scheme has remained an enigma. Within this suppression of ancient information is also the suppression of knowledge intended to catapult human beings into exponential growth and scientific development. This is where you are supposed to be, my people. And when I say my people, I'm talking about the true humans among us, irregardless of so-called racial and ethnic backgrounds and that kind of thing. This is something that is inherent in the very human soul that occupies you, not your ethnic soul, not your regional soul, not the soul that you inherited from living in the town that you live in. This is a soul that came with the original essence called the nafsin wahida. The vibrational keys have been designed to liberate, not to enslave. We will investigate how sound was used or utilized by ancient societies to transcend the limitations of physical existence, to raise consciousness, and to cure the body. That's where we'll be going over the next few days. Specific frequencies have even been used to rearrange neurological networks and to also induce higher levels of consciousness to transform the body. There are many illnesses that we can actually cure without the assistance of a doctor. You don't know how powerful your mind actually is. A lot of the things that we're suffering from are what they call psychosomatic illnesses, illnesses that are created in the mind. They go looking for it and they can't find the actual disease because the mind is so powerful that we can will ourselves to death. There are people who went to the hospital and the doctor told them you're dying from this particular disease and you have 6 months to live and all of that. And by the time the seventh month came, they were out of here. And then they reinvestigated the case and they said, oops, sorry, we made a mistake. It wasn't this patient who had 6 months. It was the other guy in the other room. This guy was fine. We could have given him a Band-Aid and he could have gone home. But because he believed it, he died. That's how powerful the mind is. The advancement and upkeep of these frequencies have been designed by our source creator to free us from the artificial bonds of enslavement manufactured for us by our manipulators. What I'm giving you here is from the Quran, where Allah speaks about the freeing of the bondsmen, where Allah speaks about the prophet as being a free man of the city, a free man of the city. This is beautiful when you understand it. The word for city in that ayat is balad, another word they use for beautiful songs. Balad, B-A-L-A-D. But it is also a consonantally connected word to the word blood. B-L-O-O-D. Connected to the word balad, B-A-L-A-D. Arabic. Blood obviously is English. Did you know that your blood was a city? Do you know that your blood contains multiple cities? When something happens to us and we get sick, we talk about that as being a particular state or condition. Look at the words that are being used. Do you know that your blood is called the CYTES? CYTES, which is where they got the English word city, CITY. They examined the blood and they found sites where things live, living biological creatures were in the blood. They had a sophisticated social organization in the blood. The blood carried the nutrients from here, from the food and into the different areas of the body where it could do the most good. And that's what people in society is supposed to do. The word Balad means a fortified city. It means a city that has its protection. It has its protective outer walls. Don't you know that your blood has that also? Your blood has protective walls around it called a membrane. Your genes, your DNA has that. It has a membrane that protects it from outside intrusion. Everything in your body is outside of you, as above, so below. If you want to know the best uses for what you find outside of you, you have to examine what you have inside of you. So the Quran keeps saying, fi, asani taqweem, in the most excellent organizational design, because the best organization is in you. And then you're supposed to replicate that out here. People mismanagement, and it comes out as socialism or communism, or it comes out as capitalism. They're trying to emulate what they find out here, but they're not looking to what they have in here. That's the pattern. That's the blueprint, what they're finding inside of themselves. And it takes the naturalist now to come and say, well, whoa, 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 look at what we found the body doing. Why don't we emulate what we find the body doing, what we find the brain doing, what we find the heart doing? Let's emulate that out here instead of using what's out here to try to fix ourselves when the picture doesn't match, the frequencies are not gelling. So I'm hoping that all of you got something wonderful out of this, that all of you got something beneficial.
Show did.
That
Show
was
did.
Absolutely.
excellent. Excellent.
Yeah, I was hoping so. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's wonderful to know. And of course, our next class will be on this Sunday, where we'll go back to the training sessions that we began with in learning the letters letter by letter, Nunetics, the Nunetics way, which I think is probably the most worthy study taking place, academically speaking, in the world, probably right now. I already see in my mind's eye. Remember, I said everything begins with imagination. I already see in my mind's eye where one day Nunetics will be taking the lead in teaching many of these so-called third world nations their academics. I've already gotten invitations from people as far away as Ghana to begin talking about the possibility of setting up schools in their land, even if it's virtual for now. I already see it. I see it happening. That is going to happen where we are setting up schools to teach the people in parts of India, faraway lands. It's going to be a beautiful thing when it happens. Are you guys still seeing my notes, or are you seeing me and us?
You.
Just you.
Yes, you.
Okay, all right, that's what I wanted. Yeah. So this is what we're preparing for. We're serious in what it is we're trying to establish. Very serious in what we're trying to establish. This is not a get rich quick scheme. The people that I'm appealing to have very little, if any, money. We'll have to get our payment in kind. They say cash or kind. For those poorer nations, it's going to have to be in kind. But if you look at what Saudi Arabia is spending right now over there with President Trump, if you look at the kind of thing that they're paying for, don't you know that they need Nunetics over there in that part of the world too? See, right now, nobody's the enemy. That's my position. Everybody has to have a fair chance at learning the Quran. If you don't want it, that's another story. If you don't think it's beneficial, that's another story. But I'm sure that when the world becomes more and more exposed to the Nunetic methodology, that they're going to become very interested in having this be the top academic interest of their children. I know that, like I know I'm sitting here looking at you. So when that happens, then you'll have very little to worry about or think about. And you are what they call in the Nation of Islam days of the 5% nation. You are the firstborn. Some of you remember that phrase. You're the firstborn. You're the first nine born. You know, they call it the first nine born. But they weren't being born. They were being hatched because that was a plot, not on their part, but on the part of the social manipulators to create fitna in the African American community. So they were hatched like eggs, fermented, put in the heat, put under a heating lamp, heat them up, get them all riled up, and get them just clucking like chickens. Couldn't get around one of them without them rattling off the lessons. We're way past that stage right now. We are living in such a beautiful moment in history that the rest of the world looks artificial right now to me. It looks like, if it disappeared tomorrow, it wouldn't matter. It would be a good thing because it's not real. But we have to give people a chance at redemption. We have to give people a chance at making a choice to grow, making a choice to be better. That's where we're headed. And I hope everybody is with me on that train, because very soon the train is going to turn into a plane. And it will be when Nunetics becomes plain, plain to understand. Does anyone have any questions for us before I conclude?
It's beautiful when you understand. That's all I got to say.
Yes, it certainly is. Anyone else?
I
Okay, so
had a,
yes.
had an opportunity to go to kindergarten graduation at Muhammad schools, and
Yeah.
they invited me to play a djembe that I hadn't played in a long time, and I
Okay. Okay. Well,
started thinking about the
where's
drum.
where's Muhammad Ali Alim Ali, because he's another one of the instructors who plays the djembe
but
and some of the other instruments. Yeah.
but I was looking it up, and it was talking about, I was thinking about our people in West Africa and the drumming and how it relates to the chakras, the tones, and the
Speak on it.
and I just wondered, why our people have that kind of sensitivity versus other people.
It's because we are age-old people.
Mm-hmm.
We are called, or under the description of what the Quran refers to as al-ula. It gives two descriptions, al-ula and al-akhirah. Al-ula means that which is age-old, very ancient. As we used to say, we're so ancient that we don't have a birth record. They don't know when we began. I'm talking about as a people. They can't. I'm talking about the people who study that stuff in the universities and the colleges. They said, well, we don't know. We keep going back, and we thought we found the beginning of Africa and the African people, and then we kept looking, and then somebody else pops up. That's a billion years earlier. So we're not saying that to shine any special light on us and to say that that makes us some type of superior model. Superiority is not in the age. Superiority is in the quality of the substance. You have to guard over your substance. You have to guard over the middle prayer, as they say, guard over the middle. Salatul wusta. He didn't say guard over the beginning, guard over the end. You have to guard over your balance, wherever those things balance out. Because in everybody's history, there's a rise and a fall. And if the so-called European, the so-called white man, if he just got here in time, then you have to give him time to do what things that just get here do. When you just got here, how were you? You weren't running into walls trying to walk. You weren't crawling and dribbling on yourself. I have to give this man credit where credit is due. He's doing what he needs to do to achieve his sense of equilibrium. He's got to balance himself on two. He's realizing that now. I'm listening to these commentators on these news programs. They're beginning to come to an understanding that they are not where they should be intellectually, morally. They are not where they're supposed to be. And many of them are understanding also that they have a lot to learn from us if we would just get ourselves together. They have a lot to learn from us. They have so much to learn from us, and they know it on the down low. They know it so much that they chose one of us to be the president of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Don't play that cheap. And that's not a value judgment on Barack Obama's performance. In that position, you have to do what they pay you to do. But it might not be in your interest.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that what the president of the United States does is in our interest anyway. good or bad. It's not in our interest. We're not supposed to be that deeply invested in a political figure.
Mhm.
You're supposed to be deeply invested in a human figure. That's why we have Muhammad as an example. So don't get too carried away with the politics. Don't get too carried away with the facade of power, as though these people have some kind of power that Allah doesn't have, or as that they can do something that Allah is not aware of. We got to stop acting like that. We got to stop acting like they're doing things that Allah can't control. I told you what Imam W.D. Muhammad said. He said, I know what they say about the New World Order, but I'm telling you that Allah is going to bring about his New World Order using their hands. So I see what's happening in the world now through very different eyes. Very different eyes. And I look for where Allah is in the picture of things happening. Because one day this happens and you might make that judgment call. And then the very next day, like people say, well, he's so with Israel that I can't support what he's doing. He's so much with, and then the very next day, you got a whole bunch of news reports coming out saying that he's going against Israel. Things are happening in increments. He will not be able to get away from what Allah has willed for him. And right now, he's seeing much more power in the so-called Muslim lands of Saudi and these other Muslim lands. He's seeing much more power than he is seeing in the leadership of Netanyahu. So things are changing. The that facade thing, that mirage thing, that hypnotism thing, that's beginning to fade. So I'm saying to all of you, just keep your eyes open and don't give your total allegiance to any of them. Any of them, because that's not where we're to go. We're a very special people that has been born into this world for a particular job, and our job is to remake the world. And the remaking of the world begins with education, the remaking of education, not the standard stuff that they gave us to work with. That's a German trick. What you call modern day school academics, that was invented by the Germans. That was invented by the globalist people who want to take over the entire world. They don't care nothing about you being black, white, green, purple, doesn't matter. They want to take you over because they have global interest, and their interest is in how many human beings they can get to kowtow to their demands. And they're at the point now where they don't even need all of you to do it. And that's why there's such a plan afoot to eliminate as many people as they can eliminate. Imam Muhammad told us the great elimination was coming. That's what he called it. He said the elimination of the human soul is coming. So when I see an RFK pop up
Hmm.
talking about the foods and eliminating the dyes out of the foods, I have to pay attention to that. I got to look at that a second time. That's never happened. Where people have championed the right of their children to have healthy food. Forget the politics, just to have healthy food to eat. That's never happened in the history of this country. And it's gaining traction. So you want to be with the true human, no matter where they are, no matter what label they are wearing. You want to be wherever the true humans are, and you will eventually become the leader of the world. I'm telling you what I know. So stick with this channel if you intend to get more information in that regard. Anyone else have anything they want to say before we conclude? Okay. So William Safir asked me to give you greetings. He couldn't make it today. He's taking care of good business with his family. And we hope to see him Sunday, inshallah, with whoever else is missing today. We know this is an off day. We're doing pretty good, though, for an off day. We thank you for those of you who made the time to show up. And inshallah, this will show up on YouTube in just a couple of hours or less. So thank you all for being with us as I greet you in the greetings of peace that obligate all of us to share that peace and to promote that peace. Salamun alaikum.
Wa alaikum
Walaikum
assalam.
assalam.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank all of you. We appreciate you.